hear, ye Sodom and ye people of Gomorrah. Because they're saying we are just like them. But the Most High is saying, no, you are them, so hear me. Today is March 12th, 2020. You are listening to another lesson from the Yalak Emet channel, Twitter, YouTube, Patreon. This lesson is titled, You Never Stopped. We know the Bible tells us that the Most High warned Israel a lot because of their idolatry, and they would not stop. A part of their idolatrous living included the making of sacrifices where they would slay the animals. And I found some verses here to show that the captivity happened because of their transgressions in these animal sacrifices, although they did other sins, such as being cruel to their own brothers and sisters and other sins. Now let's look at Isaiah chapter 1. I'll read verse 2, then verse 9 to 12. And again, this is titled, You Never Stopped. Isaiah 1 verse 2. Hear, O heavens, and give ear, O earth, for the Lord hath spoken. I have nourished and brought up children, and they have rebelled against me. Actually, I'll slip in verse 4 as well, which says, Ah, sinful nation, a people laden with iniquity, a seed of evildoers. Now, if they are laden with iniquity, and he calls them also a seed of evildoers, he's saying at the core of them, evil is found. When it's the Most High's word that should be at the core of them. So they were functioning based on that core. A seed of evildoers that are corrupters. Now you have to understand that if they are corrupters, whatever they were passing on to their children would have been corrupt. The priests from the top would have been teaching corrupt things, carrying out corruption. So if they were a seed of evildoers, just like people say from Genesis with the Garden of Eden, and they talk about the seed of Satan, and Cain was the seed of Satan and so on, and then they say Cain just was running rampant in the world, and some people say Cain is still around today and so on. So basically they're saying the seed is that strong to destroy the world, to corrupt Eden and the world. So if that is the case, if the children of Israel are a seed of evildoers and they are corrupters, then the seed in them is corrupting all they do, their practices, their rituals, their teachings, their lifestyle. So if it is the seed and the tree grows out of the seed, that means the volume of the tree when it grows up is going to look in large part like something that is corrupted or evil. So you don't have to go up close to the tree, standing under it to inspect it and to look at each leaf and so on, to see that the tree has been corrupted, it has been infected, it has been growing like that. But from a distance, you can see the tree and tell that it is corrupt. So when you look far off, like 2,000 or 3,000 years later, and you look at the seed of Israel that grew up as a tree in the Bible, and even look at them today, it is not difficult to understand that this is a corrupt tree growing in the Bible. The only reason why you think it is good to offer these animal sacrifices is because the tree became corrupt, and that which was corrupt became the norm. Because if the priests are passing on the knowledge of the Lord to you, and the priests are corrupt because they grew out of a corrupt seed, giving off corrupt branches, corrupt limbs stretching out corrupt fruit, then all you have been left to do was to eat the corrupt fruit that came off that corrupt tree that grew out of the core. So then, why does the Israelite not suspect the things in the Bible a little bit more? To say, maybe there is some amount of truth in it, but maybe most of it is corrupt. The reason why the Israelite does not think like that when they approach the Bible and call it a holy book is because they have been taught to call it a holy book. If it is their book and it led them into corruption, to put in them a core of corruption, why do you not approach the Bible and say this is a corrupt book? But I'm not saying it that way to offend you. I'm saying it to challenge you to think again. If the core of them and the core ones were documenting the book and writing the book and passing it on, the scrolls copying them, why would they not have changed stuff? Jeremiah 8 verse 8. It tells you that the pen of the scribes is in vain. How do you say you have the law of the Lord with you? The Most High is telling you that the people are corrupt. No matter how you look at them, you walk to this side of the tree, you go around the other side of the tree, you go around. No matter where you go, it looks like corruption because the seed that was corrupt brought forth the tree. This was biblical Israel. And you have their book today, and you say you are Israel. What are you but the growth of a corrupt tree? Not me just calling you a corrupt tree. The Most High himself called you that. And so they went into captivity because they were evildoers, filled with iniquity. But you were taught that it was Lucifer that fell because he had iniquity, and it was the sinners today, sinners walking on the street that's filled with. He said the people in his house, the house of Israel. So since you have not yet been delivered from your captivity, but you are still in captivity for punishment, for iniquity against your God, that means you have not yet been cleansed. So while in captivity, you are still a people of iniquity. So says the Bible. Go back and study it again. Because this is not being said to be offensive to you, like to just pick on you or something. This is a Bible teaching to bring out what the Most High said. So they are corrupters. They have forsaken the Lord. They have provoked the Holy One of Israel into anger. They are gone away backward. And so he sent them into captivity. And it goes on in verse 6. I wasn't going to read all these verses, but for the sole of the foot even unto the head. Remember I said no matter how you walk around the tree that grew out of the seed, you go to this side of the tree, the other side, you walk all the way around. Even if you climb up the tree and look at the top leaves and so. He says the whole thing is corrupt. There is no soundness in it, but wounds and bruises and putrefying sores that have not been closed, neither bound up, neither mollified with ointment. So that's how you went into captivity, Assyrian and Babylonian captivity. Since you have not been healed of your wounds, you have not been delivered, like Joel chapter 2 and 3 says he's going to give you corn and wine and all and so on. He's going to bring you back, heal you, set you up. Jeremiah says that, Isaiah says that. That means while you are in captivity today, in 2020, you have still not been bound up. Your wounds are still open. Your bruises still in 2020. Your body is showing putrefying sores when the Most High looks at you. From the sole of your head, even of your foot, even unto the head. All of you, he's saying, is sick. But you say you are the righteous on the earth. How can God keep the righteous in captivity for thousands of years? He's doing it because the sole of the foot, even unto the head, has no soundness in it, but wounds and bruises and putrefying sores that have not been closed or bound up, nor mollified with ointment. It has not been treated with ointment to heal it. That's what God sees when he looks at the biblical Israelite who say they are living today. Now let's run down to verse 9 to 12, which is what I should have been reading. Except the Lord of hosts had left unto us a very small remnant, we should have been as Sodom, and we should have been like unto Gomorrah. Now, they're trying to make it here, because again, it's like Jeremiah 8 verse 8. The pen of the scribes is in vain. And he just told you earlier on that they are corrupt, a seed of evildoers. They are corrupters in verse 4. At the core of them, they are evildoers and corrupters. And so they are corrupting now what they're saying and how they're thinking of things, even though the Most High is thinking of them different, to say that they are filled with bruises and sores. They're going to change that. They know what the Most High thinks of them because they need to straighten up their act, but they're going to tell you that he thinks that of them and then turn it around and say, we should have been like Sodom and as Gomorrah. That's what they're trying to bring off, that we should have been like Sodom and Gomorrah. But then the Lord speaks now in verse 10, leaves off of what they're saying, that we should have been like Sodom and Gomorrah. But the Most High hits back against that in verse 10 and says that they are Sodom and Gomorrah unto him. They're no different. Hear the word of the Lord, ye rulers of Sodom. Give ear unto the law of our God, ye people of Gomorrah. So if they were only like, or if they were not at all, but they were the real Judah and Israel that the Most High wanted, who was righteous and holy in their lifestyle and their practices and keeping the law of their God properly, then that verse 10 would have read something, maybe something like, hear the word of the Lord, ye rulers of Judah and Israel, ye rulers of the southern and northern kingdoms. Instead, he has to say something else. Hear the word of the Lord, ye rulers of Sodom, and give ear, ye people of Gomorrah, because the wounds are there and they refuse, they have forsaken their God. To him, they have become just the same as Sodom and Gomorrah. So like Sodom and Gomorrah, so similar, so actually them of Sodom and Gomorrah, that he gives them the same name, so that they are no longer called by the name of the Lord, but by the name of Sodom and Gomorrah. So he goes on, now that he has identified this people who go into his temple as Sodom and Gomorrah instead of Judah and Israel, he talks to them further and say to them, to what purpose is the multitude of your sacrifices unto me? Because why should Sodom and Gomorrah bring sacrifices unto the God of Israel? Saith the Lord, I am full of the burnt offerings of rams and the fat of fed beasts. He's saying, I've had enough. And I delight not in the blood. Not that I delight in the blood of all these things when you are living right. But I do not have delight in these things, period. But when they told you in the other scriptures, and having Solomon give it and so on, and the others, when they told you that the Lord liked it and liked the sweet-smelling savor of their blood sacrifices and so on, and killing these animals, they were lying to you. Even when they said earlier, we were just like Sodom and Gomorrah, the Moses says, no, hear ye Sodom and ye people of Gomorrah. Because they're saying we are just like them. But the Most High is saying, no, you are them, so hear me. Sodom and Gomorrah. But I thought Sodom and Gomorrah was already destroyed. But the Most High says they're still around. Just like people today saying Cain is still around, even though the Bible lets you know that he died. So the Most High is saying, look, Sodom and Gomorrah is gone, but another Sodom and Gomorrah has risen on earth. And they meet in the courtyard of my holy temple, and even offer these sacrifices with blood flowing everywhere that I do not delight in. Not in the blood of bullocks or of lambs or of he-goats. He doesn't delight in those things. Verse 12. When ye come to appear before me, who hath required this at your hand to tread my course? But they told you that the Most High gave many, many, many commandments to go and sacrifice these things before him. Even Moses saying to the Pharaoh, let's go and sacrifice. They told you that. But they said, who has required this at your hand to tread my courts and do these things? Because the Most High never gave them commandments to come into his courts with animal sacrifices. I never did that. I said, have no other gods, and so on. Let there be justice between each other in the land, and so on. Love your brother and sister, and so on. That's what he said to them, things like that. But they brought something else. Animals to be slaughtered before the Lord their God. These cannot be my people. So God said, these cannot be my people coming into my presence with these animals like this. When he looked closer, he said, oh, it's not Israel and Judah, it's Sodom and Gomorrah. Like the night of the living dead, Sodom and Gomorrah just kept coming back like zombies. So verse 12 is really asking, when he says, who hath required this at your hands that you should tread my course or do this thing? Verse 12 is really asking, who taught you such animal rituals? Because he knows he didn't teach them this. But the scribes corrupted the book, the Torah, to give false words from God. And the prophets prophesied lies in Baal. The Most High said that as well. Let's run over now to Psalm chapter 50 and verse 8. Now, some other time I'll look at Psalm 50 a little bit more, because if you read all of it, when I read 50, I usually read Psalm 49 to 51. But when you read it, you say, like when you read Psalm 50, it will say he don't want no sacrifices. He is not pleased with that. Doesn't want it. And then as you read some more, it will say, then will I offer sacrifices. But another time I'll do that. I'll adjust that and show why. But basically the understanding still is that he does not want any of these animal sacrifices. Because he can't tell you he don't want it, don't desire it, and wondering who gave you these precepts of animal sacrifices, and then say he's going to be pleased with it some other time. So obviously the scribes were lying. The sacrifices of God are a broken heart, a contrite spirit, a heart that is coming and turning to the Most High, toward his true precepts. That's the sacrifice that they will offer. So gather my saints together. Like in verse 5, Psalm 50 verse 5, gather my saints together, those who have made a covenant with me by sacrifice. A covenant to live properly on the earth as my people, a holy and righteous nation. The sacrifice is the sacrifice of righteousness. If you click on the word Zabak, H2077, from Psalm 50 verse 5, they make you think that the sacrifice is just killing some animals. No, it includes also the sacrifices of righteousness. In other words, he's basically saying, those who have made a covenant with me, an agreement with me, by a sacrifice of righteousness on the earth, by the sacrifice of living right on earth, when all these other nations were living in evil ways on the earth, doing anything they please and destroying the earth and destroying their own people and so on. But he was calling on the Israelite to love their God and love their brother and sister. That's a sacrifice of living righteous on earth, when you know it's so much easier to steal the next neighbor's stuff when they're at work and so on. It's a sacrifice of righteousness, to walk righteous on the earth. So, but because it says it includes the sacrifices to dead things, which is what should have only been applied to the heathen, they just make it sound like it's focusing on that alone. But no, The sacrifice includes the sacrifice of righteousness. So when now the Psalm 50 ends up saying, then will we offer sacrifices, he's just letting you know you're going to get the sacrifice that we offer up from right living when you turn our hearts back again to you, because now you have cast us off. So Psalm 50 verse 8, I will not reprove thee for thy sacrifices or thy burnt offerings, to have been continually before me. So what does that mean? It means I will not stop you from doing these animal sacrifices because you have chosen not to repent, not to turn around. Repent means to turn around, shub from the Hebrew. So because you have chosen not to repent, I will not stop you. I won't stop you. I will just let you continue to do it until you destroy yourselves fully, because you have refused to reform yourselves. So I'll let you keep doing it until you just get destroyed. Just like I remember this psychologist. He died now, John Bradshaw, someplace in the U.S. I can't remember where, but basically John Bradshaw, and he's saying he was an alcoholic as well for a long time, and he was in seminary or something like that. I think he was in training to be a priest in the Catholic religion. And if I remember correctly, it's been a long time since I looked up his story, but basically he was an alcoholic, drinking himself to his end. But he just continued. It was hurting his body. He knew it wasn't good for him, but he kept doing it. And so he was just like every alcoholic who keeps going so far until, they just can't help themselves, right? Because we know that strong stuff, it really grips you. And he says he came to the point where he hit rock bottom. He ended up in the hospital. He almost died from it, from drinking so much. He almost drank himself to death. And that was what turned him around. So the Most High is saying, I will not reprove you for these things because you will not stop. I will let you drink yourself with the blood of your animal sacrifices all the way to your own destruction. Then maybe you will listen to me. Because you're not listening to now, things are still going too well. You're not going to listen to me. So I will not reprove thee for thy sacrifices. I will just let you continue because you have refused to repent from your transgressions of taking on animal sacrificing. So, you, the Israelite, never stopped animal sacrificing. So you entered into captivity and destroyed your own kingdom when your transgressions, like a pendulum, swung back into your face. Final verse, Jeremiah chapter 2 and verse 19. Thine own wickedness shall correct thee, and thy backslidings shall reprove thee. Because he just said in Psalm 50 verse 8, I will not reprove thee for these things. He says, I won't do it. He's just going to let you go and let your own transgressions and your own backslidings and your own wickedness in doing these things, I will let your own wickedness correct thee. I will let your own wickedness punish thee until you get into captivity that shows that you are in punishment for what you chose to do and not return from. So he's not reproving you for it. He's going to let you destroy yourself till you get into captivity, and then you will choose and decide for yourself, we do not want to worship false gods anymore. When we get out of this, we will walk the way our God said, in righteousness, with the sacrifice of righteousness on this earth, not with the sacrifices of Passover, blood of lambs and so on, and high holiday slaughtering of animals and so on. Thine own wickedness shall correct thee, and thy backsliding shall reprove thee. So when you hear people saying, I will not, Psalm 50 verse 8, I will not reprove thee for thy sacrifice and so on, they make it sound like, see, he's not stopping them, he's not correcting them, correcting them, because nothing was wrong with it. But he goes on, if you line it up properly, your own wickedness shall correct thee. because thou hast forsaken the Lord thy God, and that my fear is not in thee, saith the Lord God of hosts. I will let your own sins of animal sacrificing, worshipping these idols with your sacrificing that you have brought into Israel, I will let your transgressions punish you because you chose not to stop when I called.